Whether the team is performing clean or unsightly, we'll cover it all here on Washington Football Nightly. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So, a lot has been made of the storylines leading up to this Sunday's game in Week 11 against the Carolina Panthers, and rightfully so. There are so many storylines, so many ties between these two organizations right now. Ron Rivera really being the fabric that ties those two organizations together. He brought a lot of the staff over from Carolina with him to Washington. Cam Newton and that whole dynamic of him being available and Ron pretty much shunning him twice, and the relationship that they shared in Carolina for 9 years. You know, Cam being Ron's first draft pick in Carolina. Scott Turner, our offensive coordinator, having worked there, having worked with Cam at one point. There's so many storylines. I mean, Heineke, his is somewhat in the backdrop, and Heineke really tried to downplay it. But even Heineke was there in Carolina as well. So there are a lot of different storylines. But at the end of the day, and I've said this before, I'm going to reiterate it again, and we knew Ron was going to try to downplay it, but I told you the media wasn't going to let it die, and they're not supposed to. This is their job. Their job is to conjure up a story. And there are enough stories to go around for everyone to have something to write about. And so you're going to ask the players about it. You're going to ask the coaching staff about it. But at the end of the day, this isn't about Ron Rivera going back to Carolina. This isn't about Cam Newton taking on his ex-coach or Ron taking on his ex-player. It's not about this coaching staff who used to be in Carolina here in Washington now wanting revenge. This is about us needing a victory. This is about us trying to make it 2 straight for the first time this season. That's what it's about. And you'll hear that from the players from time to time. And you've heard it from some guys who really wanted no parts of this, conversation about this reunion, as Terry McLaurin put it. They don't really care about that. At the end of the day, I've already said how I feel. The players know that there's an importance to Ron with this game, okay? Ron's going to downplay it. He's going to say, hey, guys, it's not about me. We need to win. That's all fine and dandy, but they know that coach wants this one bad, and they're going to try to go out and get it for him, and that's all great. It's an extra chip on their shoulder to try to go out and win a football game for their head coach. But at the end of the day, I want to push all of that aside because there are enough people talking about those things that we don't need to talk about them. There are enough people bringing those things to the forefront. I want to push that to the back because that has nothing to do. When they kick that football off at 1:05 on Sunday, no one's going to be talking about Ron Rivera or Cam Newton. And now you'll get a couple of those things during the telecast where they'll bring it up and they'll show some pictures of those two together and, through the years and all of that good stuff. But at the end of the day, once that football's kicked off at 1:05, it's Washington versus Carolina, and we need our second straight win to try to get to 4-6 on the season. And that's what it's about. And in order to do that, we're going to have to rely on some guys that we customarily don't rely on. The depth will be tested. We've talked about depth specifically this week quite a bit. Why? Because injuries have taken place at some critical positions. Now, we're still getting guys back, which is a good thing. For as much of this depth talk as we've had, we're getting guys back on a daily. And we're getting more guys back today, and we're going to talk about that. Today was a good day if you were a little nervous. I was nervous. I'm not going to lie to you. And I told you guys we would get clarity on the injury situation today. And I feel like I have that now. I kind of know what to expect moving into week number 11. And we'll get to that later on in the show when we get to In Other News. However, we're going to have to rely on some guys on that defensive line. More likely than not, we're going to have to rely on some guys at the tight end position. The depth will be tested in this ball game. And we're going to have to ask some young guys to step up. And I hope they're ready because we need some of their best performances to get us through this stretch. This is the most important stretch of the season right now. And then ultimately, if this stretch of football is successful, then the back end of the schedule with the 5 divisional games in 5 straight weeks, that becomes the most important. But that isn't important if we don't take care of business here. Remember like last week when we were doing the keys to the game? And I said, hey, if we don't do this first key defensively against Tampa Bay's offense, if we don't take care of this first key to the game, the rest of the keys are rendered obsolete. The rest of them are irrelevant because this first one is so important. And that first key was to get Brady off of the spot. Get him off of his mark, because once he gets back there, the back foot hits the ground and a guy's open and he sees it, he's going to let it rip. And you're in trouble. So you got to get him off of his spot. You got to make him uncomfortable. We were able to do that. So all the other things started to come into play afterwards. It's no different here, okay? It's the same concept and premise. These next 3 games are going to set the stage for the last 5 to matter. If we don't take care of business in these 3 games, and this Carolina game is pretty much on par with what the Tampa game was, even though we didn't know it at the time because we thought we were going to lose. A lot of us did. I can't speak for everyone. I thought we were going to lose, so I didn't think that game was all that important because I didn't think we were going to win it. But we did. So now here we are with a chance to win another game and to really start to plant that belief in this coach or in this organization, in these players, in these coaches, moving forward, that we can do it again. We did it last year. We got hot right around this same exact time. If you recall, it was literally middle of November where we got hot into the beginning of December. We can do it again. But this time the streak is going to have to extend out all the way through December into January if we want a chance to make it to the postseason. But it's one at a time. We got the first one. That's important because it builds confidence. I'm listening to these guys talk. I hear confidence in their voice. The confidence is starting to exude. You want that. You want that confidence to go all the way up, right into that cocky line, and then stop. We can't smell ourselves yet. You want cockiness when you know you're that team. We're not that team yet. So I don't want cockiness. I want confidence all the way up until you get to that cocky line and then stop. And that's where I feel like we're heading. We're trending in that direction. We're starting to believe. We think that we are capable of winning every single week we step on the football field. But there are going to be some young guys that are going to be counted on. You know, Bumney Routinely, going to step up. Got to have it. He's going to see a lot of snaps this week. Obviously, Casey Toohill. Obviously, James Smith-Williams. Obviously, Shaka Toney. These are all guys we're going to be relying on. John Bates, here it is. We drafted you in the 4th round. Didn't expect to play you in this type of role as the number 1 guy, but you may be up this week. Samis Reyes, we had no intentions of putting him on the field in a competitive capacity. From an offensive standpoint, yeah, he could play some special teams reps. We had no intentions of putting him on the field in a competitive offensive capacity. You might be up this week, young fella. You played 4 snaps last week. It might be 24 this week. Who's to say? Depth will be tested. It's good to know we're getting some guys back and that we're not having to tap into depth in other areas. But the depth will be tested. And we're going up against a hell of a football team. Don't sleep on the Panthers. We slept on them last year. They came right into FedEx and left with the dub. We looked at their record and we downplayed them. Oh, it's the Panthers. We should beat them. They marched. And I told you guys before that game, don't sleep on this Panthers team. They've been in every ball game and they've lost a bunch of them by, 3 to 7 points. 1 score or less. Every single game. We're not sleeping on them this time around. They're better than us. They're 5-5. Their defense is electric. Everybody wants to talk about Cam and the offense. I want to talk about their defense because that's what ultimately, if we don't win this game, it'll be because their defense dominates our offense, not because I feel like their offense is going to dominate our defense. But we'll talk more about that tomorrow. Let's get to in other news. Coordinators stepped up to the podium today. So we heard from Jack Del Rio. We heard from Scott Turner. We also heard from Brandon Sheriff. There were some funny moments there. We'll talk about that here in a second. But what I want to focus on initially, like we always do, is the injury report for both teams heading into week number 11's contest. And really, there's nothing to talk about with the Panthers, and you'll see that here in a second. But let's take a look at Washington's injury report from practice today. And there's some good news coming. So let's take a look at this thing. And as you can see, it's quite robust. It's a long list, and It's probably about 12 players, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 players. So it's still robust. I was hoping this thing would shrink, after the bye week. It did not, which is fine, because a lot of these guys are going to play. A lot of these guys are going to play. So as you can see, only 2 DMPs. Remember, yesterday there were about 4 DMPs for this team. So this is a massive improvement from yesterday. And what you will notice, the thing that I was the most worried about yesterday, I'm not going to lie to you, I was worried about Benjamin St-Juste and Kendall Fuller, because Fuller's knee, every now and again, it crops up. This isn't the first time Kendall Fuller's been on the injury report due to a knee injury. And Benjamin St-Juste coming off of the concussion, having not practiced on Wednesday, and then, he had practiced the last time he had a concussion, he practiced that following Wednesday. I'm not going to lie to you, I was nervous. I didn't want to have to tap into depth in the secondary, specifically at the cornerback position. But that's where we were headed. If Benjamin St-Juste hadn't practiced today, and if Kendall Fuller hadn't practiced today, that's where we were headed. It was about to be time for some of these other guys to step up and maybe have to play some meaningful reps. And that could get really scary, because we're just starting to, hit our stride in the secondary. The last thing we want to do is all of a sudden now have to integrate some new guys, So it's the thing that I was most concerned about was the cornerback position. Those fears were put to rest today with both Fuller and St-Juste going at a limited capacity. I feel good now. I feel great, actually, that those guys are going to play on Sunday. And really, there's no other surprises here. Everything looks to be in order. Everybody here is going to play. Of the 11 guys that you see in front of you, I told you that there were 2 guys in particular that weren't going to play. We already knew that going in, which is Curtis Samuel and Ricky Seals-Jones. Now, Curtis Samuel was on the side field, which I guess is somewhat news, because he hadn't even been out on the practice field in any capacity, side field or the regular field. Hadn't been out there in over a week. So the fact that he was even on the side field stretching with some of the likes of Logan Thomas and, some of those other guys that are banged up as well, Montez Sweat, he was on the side field with those guys. That's positive, but he's been on the side field all year and hasn't really played. So I'm not reading too much into that, other than, hey, it's good to see him out on the practice field, on the side field, I should say. So I don't expect him to play. I don't expect Ricky Seals-Jones to play with his hip. And that's it. I feel really good knowing that we had 5 DMPs yesterday, and that DMP list is down to 2. So, and it's 2 guys that we knew weren't going to play anyway. It's not like those were surprises or we were wondering. Those 2 guys, we expect them to be out, and we are bracing ourselves for life without Ricky Seals-Jones. We've been going through this season without Curtis Samuel. Hell, it's hard to miss what you've never really had. So from that perspective, we're fine. The only guy that's not listed here, that there's still an outside chance, and I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think he's playing, and I'm mentally preparing myself for him not to play, is Logan Thomas. He's still technically on IR. They have not activated him yet, and so he isn't on this list. Other than that, I think we're good to go. 9 of the 11 guys are going to play, and we should feel really good about that. They were either limited or full participants in practice, and that's a good thing. So I'm much more encouraged by the injury report today than I was yesterday, and I told you guys we were going to get clarity. I feel like we have it now. We know that 2 guys are going to be out, and I think it's going to ultimately be 3 in Logan Thomas, and then everybody else is ready to go. So I think that is a really good sign for us that we're trending in the right direction from a health standpoint. And at some point, we still got reinforcements coming. We still are going to get Logan Thomas back at some point. We're still going to get Montez Sweat back at some point. And there's an outside chance, don't hold your breath, that we may even get Curtis Samuel back. So while we're trying to find ways to win, we may actually be getting better as this season progresses, not just on the field, but adding guys that can help on the field that have been off the field as well. Let's get to the Panthers. There's nothing to see here, okay? There were 4 guys. I told you they were non-impactful guys, really, and all of them I felt like had a chance to play. Well, all of them were full participants today. There's nothing to see here. They are as healthy as they've been all season long. Go figure. When we show up in town, they're the healthiest they've been all season. Yeah, I don't know why I'm upset, because this is what happens when we show up. Teams get healthy. Like, where's our Geno Smith? No, we don't get Geno Smith. We get Russell Wilson. Where's our Sam Darnold? No, we don't get Sam Darnold. Where's our, Chuba Hubbard? No, we don't get Sam Darnold and Chuba Hubbard. No, we get Cam Newton and Christian McCaffrey. But that's our story. So it is what it is. Anyway, we heard from the coordinators today. And I want to start with Scott Turner, because, he talked about that, epic 19-play, 80-yard, 10-minute, 26-second drive. And he said, look, I was just in the zone. I was just calling plays. He said it wasn't until, you got later in the drive where you realized, okay, wow, we've really burnt off some clock. And now he's like, we didn't start the drive in 4-minute offense. Because that's what it felt like. It felt like a 4-minute offense drive. He's like, we didn't start the drive. It was 10 minutes and 55 seconds left. We didn't start the drive in 4-minute offense. We started the drive normally, and then it progressed into, because we had so many third downs and we converted and we kept the clock going, it converted into a 4-minute offensive drive. But, Brandon Sheriff even piggybacked off of that and said, we didn't realize it as an offense on the field until we got to the 3-minute mark and Tampa Bay used their first timeout. And he said, whoa, well, we burnt 6 minutes off the clock already. And that's when it finally hit him, like, yo, we got a chance to really end this thing on the field offensively. So it was a hell of a drive. And it's always pretty cool to hear, what was going through the minds of some of those involved in that drive, Scott Turner, Brandon Sheriff, and the guys on the field. And so that was awesome to relive once again. He talked about, having to rely on some of these young guys. He said, look, guys are going to have to step up. Sammy Reyes played 4 snaps last week. He did an okay job, but we're going to get him ready to play this week, which tells me, I'd like to read the tea leaves and read in between the lines, which tells me Logan Thomas isn't playing this week, more likely than not. He said, look, John Bates played really well. He said that catch he had over the middle of the field, he said, look, he's not the athlete in terms of speed that, Logan Thomas and Ricky Seals-Jones are. He's not that. And I'm not telling anybody anything that they don't already know. But he says he's plenty quick. He's just as quick as those guys. And he said when he made that catch over the middle of the field, he's a big dude, which he is. Like, that safety was there. He couldn't do anything. He got boxed out. John Bates is a big dude, man. So he's like, we can do everything we need to do with John Bates. He says the only thing he needs to do is hold on to the ball. He almost fumbled there, and he's like, we can't have that. And so I'm glad. And Scott's always been a straight to the point guy. I've never gotten a sugarcoat, or dancing around the issue type of vibe from him. When something happens that he doesn't like, he usually calls it out. So same thing with Taylor Heinicke. He said, yeah, Taylor played well, but he said there was some opportunities in there for him to get rid of the football and some of those sacks. He could have gotten rid of the ball, and he needs to do that. And that's exactly what I've been saying. I talked about charging like 3 of those sacks to his account. I think 2 were legitimately on the offensive line. They got beat, or, they came with a pressure and they hit home. But 3 of those sacks I thought were on Taylor Heinicke. He could have done something other than take a sack. So, Scott was pretty much direct with that. He talked about the reunion and going back to Carolina and what it means. And, essentially the same message that I talked about earlier. Look, it's cool. There is a lot of history there between Ron and, a lot of the guys that are on the staff that came from Carolina, including myself. But at the end of the day, we got a ball game to win, and that's my message, is that, hey, all of this stuff is cool. We let everybody else talk about that. I want to talk about how we can find a way to get a win and make it 2 in a row. Because at the end of the day, that's all I care about. That's all I want, is for us to continue to play meaningful football moving forward and give ourselves a chance, because it's wide open in the NFC. I've already gone through that exercise, and we'll go through it more if we find a way to win this game, because it'll make that Monday night game against Seattle that much more important. So, moving on to Jack Del Rio, he talked about, the defense continuing to improve. He talked about, obviously he called them your premium players, and Chase and Montez out on the field. He's like, look, we're not going to have those guys. So you do what you have to do. And, he was asked a question that, usually Jack doesn't like to get into, which is, scheme and philosophy, where, Ben Standing pretty much said, look, I know you don't want to get in. That's how they try to disarm you. They try to tell you, hey, I know you don't want to do this, but, you know, it worked a little bit, but Jack kind of, you know, danced his way, because Jack's a professional. He danced his way around it. But, you know, he pretty much, Ben Standing did, asked, hey, is this going to be a situation where you just put your best four on the field and they don't necessarily have to be defensive ends? And we've talked about that, like in a situation where you may get across the line from left to right, you know, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, Matt Ioannidis, and, you know, Tim Settle all on the field, or James Smith-Williams as the other defensive end. And that's the four guys they put on the field. You know what I'm saying? You could get a situation like that. And we saw it on Sunday. And then, you know, Jack also said, well, there'll be times where there's two guys on the field. And there'll be times where there's three defensive linemen. You know, so we're going to mix it up. We're going to find a way to put our guys in the best position to be successful. And we'll figure it out. You know, we'll do what we need to do to try to be successful against that Panthers offense. He talked about Tim Settle's dwindling snap count numbers. And he said, look, we really weren't on the field all that much, which is a good thing. You know, there weren't that many defensive snaps. When you hold your opponent to 4 of 10 on third downs and you have a 10-minute, 26-second drive that eats up essentially a whole quarter, your defense isn't on the field all that much. And they weren't. And there were a couple of drives that literally ended with one play. It was an interception. And then another drive was like every bit of 5 or 6 plays, and then Brady threw his second interception. So defense was not on the field all that much in the football game. And so there weren't a lot of snaps for Tim Settle to occupy. So he said, look, Tim's done a great job for us this year. And, you know, just weren't a lot of snaps. And, you know, so it was what it was. But, you know, Tim's done a great job, and he'll continue to do a great job for us. As for, you know, going up against Carolina and Cam Newton, he was really, you know, blunt where he said, look, there's no way Cam knows their entire offense, which is why I always harken back to a lot of the people. And I talked about the C3 podcast that I was on, and they wanted to talk so much about the offense. I'm like, there's only so much Cam can do. He only has been there for a week and a half, essentially. Like, there's only so much Cam can digest. They can't put the whole offense in. They're going to do the things that Cam does well. And, you know, Jack said, look, we're going to prepare for both quarterbacks because there's only so much Cam can do. You know, P.J. Walker's been there the entire year. He was there last year. He knows the offense. So they can run more with him in there than they can with Cam. So they're going to prepare for both. But he says, we're going to prepare for the things that Cam does well. That's read option. That's RPO. That's quarterback keep. That's quarterback power. That's quarterback, you know, student body left, sweep. You know what I'm saying? So that they need to prepare for all those things because they're going to see it. That's how they're going to maximize Cam Newton, is by doing the things that he does well. And then off of that, you have to also prepare yourself for Christian McCaffrey. And Jack said, look, my son played high school ball with him. They won a state championship together. So I know how talented Christian McCaffrey is. I know what this guy does. He's got tremendous contact balance. He's got tremendous quicks and speed. He can do it all. He can catch it out of the backfield. He said he can do everything. He said, hell, he can even throw it. So Jack knows that our work is cut out for us. And we definitely have to come with our A game defensively. But he says, look, I like what our guys have been doing. I like how we have been trending. And I think we're in a good spot. And we just got to continue to work and do the things that have gotten us to this point. And then one last thing he said, you know, talking about Landon Collins, he was like, look, you know, a lot of people have made a lot about where he's playing and the title and this, that, and the third. You know, at the end of the day, Landon's playing good ball. Whether he's at safety, he's at, you know, down around the line of scrimmage, you know, in a linebacker type of role. It doesn't matter what you call him, he's playing well, and that's all that we care about. So, and that's all I care about. I don't really give a shit. I told you semantics at this point. And I told you guys that, you know, a few weeks ago. It's semantics. Who cares if he's a safety or not? He wants to be called a safety, call him a safety. If he wants to call himself a playmaker, call him a playmaker. I don't give a shit. Just play well. And he's been doing that. So, let's transition to our final segment of the show, and that's our first look at the Carolina Panthers. So, want to kind of brace you for what we'll talk about tomorrow and what you should be looking forward to with this Panthers team come Sunday. So, the first thing I want to talk about is their defense. Everybody wants to talk about their offense. Cam Newton this, Cam Newton that. That's cute. To me, that's another storyline. And he may ultimately be impactful in this game. I'm not minimizing what he means to that team. Even just his presence gives them an emotional boost and lift, right? I said this on the show last night. I'll say it again. It's going to be a playoff-like environment. Cam Newton is joining forces with the Carolina Panthers organization. He's going to purchase 50 tickets, essentially, to help people get in the stadium that don't normally come to games. And he said because he wants this game to have a quote-unquote playoff-like atmosphere. So I told you what they're trying to do. I used that same phrase yesterday. Did I not tell you guys? Playoff-like atmosphere, playoff-like environment. It's going to be juiced and charged. If we win the toss, we need to defer and get the ball after halftime, but we need to get on the field defensively and use that crowd against them because they're going to be amped, right? We don't want the Panthers to go on defense first because they're going to feed off of that crowd energy and they're going to be flying around. And it could backfire and be beneficial for us because they may be so juiced up that they overrun something, that they take false steps in the pass game on play action fake, or they overrun a gap in the run game. You know, sometimes that stuff can work against you, but it's going to be loud and it's going to be raucous early in that game. It's our job to simmer them down. Simmer down now. It's our job to simmer them down. But it's going to be loud and it's going to be crazy at Bank of America Stadium. But the beautiful thing is we usually have a tremendous turnout in Carolina. Why? Because a lot of Washington fans exist in that market, because before there was a Carolina Panthers fan, that entire state was all Washington Redskins fans. So I'm hoping that the Washington faithful show up, show out like they normally do in Carolina, and give us a presence there at Bank of America Stadium. Anyhow, I want to talk about their defense. Their defense is phenomenal, and they've got playmakers at every level. Their secondary is crazy with Stephon Gilmore and Dante Jackson and second-year safety Jeremy Chin. They're ridiculous back there on the back end. Then you've got Shaq Thompson, who's playing at a Pro Bowl type level this season. He, at one point before his injury, he was playing at an all-pro level. Okay, he was playing that well. He's already got like 3 or 4 interceptions on the season. You cannot afford to make a mistake around him. He will make you pay for it. And then the defensive line, they lead the NFL in sacks right now, do the Carolina Panthers. They've been that ferocious up front between Brian Burns and Derek Brown on the interior. And on the other side, Hassan Reddick. This is a group that can get after the quarterback with the best of them in the league. So we have to be on our P's and Q's, Y's and Z's in this football game to protect Taylor Heinicke, to give him the time that he needs to survey the field and get the football to the necessary open target. So I think there are a lot of things that we will have to take a look at, but we can run the football on this Panthers football team. They can be run on, all right? But you've got to be smart about how you go about everything. But they can be run on. And you can throw it on them as well, but you have to be selective. They've got, as you know, Stephon Gilmore is a dog, okay? They've got guys that make plays on the football, so we've got to be careful. Very, very careful. On the offensive side, they're a work in progress. They've got some guys that can make plays, DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. Those are their 2 big-time receivers. They've got a couple of tight ends, Trimble that they drafted out of Notre Dame in the second round, and they've also got second or third round, and then they still have Ian Thomas. So they got some tight ends, but the key to them is Christian McCaffrey and now Cam Newton. That's going to be the key to stopping their offense, and specifically Christian McCaffrey, because while Newton will be a force that we'll have to deal with, there's only so much he's going to be able to do, as Jack Del Rio stated. Christian McCaffrey is the guy that we really have to, centralize a lot of the focus on and make sure that we slow him down, because if you cut the head off, the body will die. He's really the head of that offense. When he's out there, they're dangerous. When he's not, they're a subpar NFL offense. So there's a lot that goes into, stopping this Panthers team. We'll talk more about it tomorrow, but that's your first look at the Carolina Panthers. They don't get a lot of explosive plays. A lot of what they do is nickel and dime, but they have the ability to get explosive plays if you are sloppy with what you are doing. So we must pay attention to the details this week, and we'll talk more about that tomorrow. But that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the Thursday installment of Washington Football Nightly. I am a Washington fan, etched in burgundy and gold. My Washington spirit will never die. Washington spirit will never fold. Until we meet again, hail to our beloved Washington football team. Look forward to chopping it up with you guys on Friday, where you'll get my keys to victory and my prediction score and more. Until then, you guys have a good one. See you next time.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hole. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35, the 30, the 20.